In the beginning of time, when God created the earth, he made a big and beautiful garden filled with wonderful trees, delicious fruits, colorful flowers, amazing animals, and beautiful streams. This garden was called Eden, and God put his most special creation, a man named Adam, in charge of Eden. And God told Adam that he could eat any fruit from any of the trees in the garden, all except the tree of life. Adam was not to eat any fruit from the tree of life, because if he did, he would know everything about good and evil, but he would be doomed to die. But God didn't want Adam to be alone, so he gave him a beautiful wife named Eve. One day, Eve was by herself in a corner of the garden when a very sneaky and crafty animal came slithering up to her. It was a serpent. And the serpent said to Eve, "Did God really say you can't eat any fruit from the trees?" And Eve said, "Of course we may eat it. It's only the fruit from the tree in the center of the garden that we are not allowed to eat. God says we mustn't eat it or even touch it, or we will die." "That's a lie," said the serpent. "You'll not die. God knows the moment you eat it, you'll become like him." Ooh, the fruit looked so good. Eve took one of the fruits and ate it, and then she gave some to her husband Adam, and he ate it too. Uh-oh. As soon as they did, they realized they were naked, and so they hid in the trees. And that evening when God came out, they didn't come out to greet him. No. And God called, "Adam, why are you hiding?" And Adam said, "I knew I was naked, so I didn't want you to see me, and I hid." And God said, "Who told you you were naked? Have you eaten fruit from the tree I warned you about?" And Adam knew he'd been caught, but he didn't want to get in trouble. So he said, "Yes, I did, but it was the woman you gave me. She brought me some." And God said to Eve, "How could you do such a thing?" And Eve said, the serpent tricked me." God was very disappointed that Adam and Eve had disobeyed him, because now they had sinned and they could no longer live with God. So God had to send Adam and Eve away from the garden. And that was how one sin separated humans from God forever. But God loved his most precious creation so much, he didn't want us to die and be separate from him forever. But who would save us from our sin? Who would bring us back to God? It would be another man in another garden many years later. This second garden was called Gethsemane. It was not a big and beautiful garden like Eden. No, it was a small and simple garden. And one dark night, in the middle of Gethsemane, a man was on his knees. He was very sad because he knew that in just a few moments, soldiers were going to come and arrest him and sentence him to death. And he couldn't try to escape because he made an agreement with his Father. This man was Jesus, the Son of God. God sent him into the world to be born as a tiny baby and grow up to become a great man. Also, he could carry all the sins and sicknesses of everyone in the whole world. But this was a very difficult thing to do because Jesus had never sinned. He was not guilty, but he knew they would treat him like a criminal and hang him on a cross, and he would die a very painful death. And the thought of so much suffering was too much for Jesus to bear. So he cried out to God, "Father, please let this suffering pass from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done, O Lord." And in that moment, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus chose to obey God's command, follow God's will. And the next day, he willingly gave up his life It was the greatest sacrifice in the history of the whole world. You see, in the Garden of Eden, Adam disobeyed God. And by that one sin, we were separated from God forever. But in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus obeyed God. And by that one sacrifice, you and I can live with God and the angels in heaven happily ever after.